G'day cocktail lovers, how are you? I hope you've been well. Guess what? June the 19th is World Martini Day. That makes it fairly easy for me to decide what to do a video about. Now, I recently did do a video on the famous James Bond Vesper Martini, which diverges quite a lot from what's regarded as a traditional martini. For this video, I'm going to make a couple of variations on pretty traditional martini recipes. The interesting thing is the amount of variation in martini recipes. As someone who says a martini is one thing and says I'm an expert and I know that this is what a martini is, they're portraying they know very little about martinis, because it's a weird drink. Because to me, when I look at it, on one level, it's a very simple drink. It's gin or vodka as the base spirit and vermouth. That's pretty simple. But you can vary the amounts of gin and vermouth to all sorts of degrees and it's still a martini. You can prepare it different ways. Stirred, shaken, or if you're taking nice cold spirits straight out of the freezer, just pour it straight into the glass. You can season it. Some people like some orange bitters in there, or some other additives as seasoning. And of course, there's garnishes, olives, lemon peel, all sorts of things are used as garnish. I was looking at the Difford's Guide website, fairly authoritative cocktail website, and they have quite an interesting and detailed history of the martini. And what it comes down to is, even with the basic, the most common variations of base spirit and the ratios and the garnish and the preparation, etc. There are thousands of variations on a martini before you even start getting tricky and fussy. Like, all the flashy ones, like an espresso martini or a chocolate martini, or all these tiny variations with additives and whatnot that go beyond just being a spirit and vermouth. Without even worrying about those, there's thousands of variations. And then taking into account the gins in particular, there are so many thousands of gins in the world that all have their own flavor profile. So a martini is going to taste different with each gin that's in it and with each vermouth that's in it. So at that stage, you're into the millions, if not billions, of variations of things that will still be a martini. So maybe don't obsess too much about how you make it. It's a simple base drink that can be enjoyed in a simple way, or you can do a bit of flair and come up with a few additives. It's had quite a few changes to its recognized recipe over the years, but I'm going to do relatively straightforward martinis, but I'm going to use different spirits and vermouths, which I expect to produce really different drinks, even though they're still martinis. I'm going to start off with one that uses a gin from an Australian distillery called Tiny Bear. This is a Navy strength gin, so 58% alcohol. An average gin's about 40%, or 40 to 50. So Navy strength is the serious stuff. This is one that I'd seriously considering shaking the cocktail, because when people say, oh, you don't shake a martini, there are two reasons people object to shaking martinis. One is it dilutes the drink more than stirring does, and it can also aerate it. So a lot of classic martinis are a really nice, visually clear drink. And if you shake it, it's going to be cloudy for a while, at least till it clears. Honestly, with a Navy strength, a little bit of dilution wouldn't go astray. But I think I'll be brave and I will just do it stirred. The other gin I'm going to use is another Australian gin, all Aussie Martinis in this video. This is from the Applewood Distillery. This is a 43% gin, so not as fierce as the Tiny Bear Sailor gin. And I'm going to pair this with a sweet vermouth, which some people would say is sacrilege, but it's made by the same people. It's a yuzu infused sweet vermouth. So this will be the Applewood Martini, and with the Tiny Bear I'm going to use a different Australian vermouth, Maiden Eyes Classic Vermouth. And these are going to give, while theoretically both martinis, they're going to be quite different drinks. In terms of ratio, I'm going to make these fairly dry martinis, in other words leaning heavily on the gin. I'm going to go 60 mils of gin to 15 mils vermouth. You can do more or less depending on your taste, but that's a fairly classic delineation. So that's 60 mils or 2 ounces of gin, and there will be 15 mils or half an ounce of vermouth going in. Besides being a sweet vermouth, this Unico vermouth that I got from Applewood is also quite a strong colour. So this is going to be a rather colourful martini. Time to give it a stir. Straining this into a martini glass. And there we have our sweet martini. Moving on to our navy strength and much drier martini. Here we go with 60 mils or 2 ounces of the Sailor Tiny Bear's navy strength gin. And we're having half an ounce, 15 mils of Maiden Eyes Classic Vermouth in this one. You want to stir your martini for 20-30 seconds. You really want to get it nice and chilled. And a little bit of dilution doesn't hurt. Like I said, I was leaning towards actually shaking this one navy strength because I'm a bit of a wuss, and I could do with a teeny tiny bit of dilution in this, I think. There's a range of quite traditional garnishes for martinis. Use cocktail onions, olives, capers. I'm going to go with a lemon twist. Just simple, peel off a nice strip from the lemon, and I'm going to express some of the oils over the top of the martini and give it a little twist and just drop it in. I am not very fussy with doing garnishes on cocktails, but a martini is one that kind of needs it. And now it's time for the double fisting taste test. I feel like I haven't been doing enough double fisting on the channel recently. So we'll go at once. I'm going to go with the sweet martini first because I might get overpowered by the navy strength one. So here it goes. You do get that really nice citrus aroma from having spritzed the lemon peel in here. But for a taste, that works really well. I am not hugely into drinking gin on its own. I'm not a real gin aficionado. And this is mostly gin, but just the half ounce of the vermouth in this one has really brought some balance in there, and I'm a big fan of the citrus in there as well. Hey, maybe you like salty. A lot of people like the dirty martini, sometimes not just with the olive, but also olive brine in the drink. That's a filthy dirty martini if you go putting a shot or half a shot of olive brine in there as well. Now it's time for me to be brave and try the martini with the navy strength gin. Oh, also good, but again, it's a really different drink. The sweet vermouth, the yuzu sweet vermouth from Unico that's in this one has a much more fruity tone, whereas this one with the Maiden Eye Classic vermouth in here, the lemon really comes forward. I think the sweet vermouth is swamping the lemon a tiny bit in this one. This one is much brighter. It's got a really sharp. Yeah, I was a bit scared of the navy strength gin, quite honestly, and you can really tell this is a higher proof gin in this one. But again, it's all about the balance. Having some vermouth in there as well, and the lemon twist. has just taken the edge off the gin. And it's worked really well. I'm not a huge martini drinker, but there's a reason it's a classic that's been around in one form or another for well over a century. Because you can adjust it to your tastes. There are a whole bunch of little twists and tricks you can do with it. Find out what works for you. My big advice, if you're ever ordering a martini in a bar and you're not a martini person, you can either just go with the bartender's recommendation, but understand the difference. If you're not seriously into gin, you probably don't want a really dry martini. And hey, if you like olives, get a dirty martini. But yes, be aware, if they say, do you want it dirty? That means salty. So if that doesn't sound appealing to you, don't get that. Lemon twist is a lovely little twist. You know, a little bit of orange bitters, which I didn't use in these, but a lot of people do. That would bring a whole different element as well. For something that we think is straightforward, the martini, there is a lot of complexity in there, and there's a lot to like in there. And even if you think you don't, you could probably find a variation that you would like. So yeah, there we go. World Martini Day, all Aussie Martinis. I'm going to enjoy finishing these. I hope you have a jolly beverage or two yourself. Hope you enjoyed seeing these variations in here. And I'm going to try and do much more with Australian beverages in making cocktails. I'm not going to limit myself to Australian producers, but I think, you know, people need to know there are some incredibly high quality spirits, vermouths, etc., and liqueurs in Australia. They're well worth your time. Yeah, get local wherever you are. It's a great way. You can feel a little bit better about your drinking. You go, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a supporter of small business. That line, stolen from one of my regulars on the live stream, Kirsten, who is definitely going to be on this channel sometime soon. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did and you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. And if you are subscribed, tell your friends. They should be subscribed too. They can have a bit of fun and maybe learn a thing or two here. You can ring the little bell so you get notifications. Let me know if there's something in particular you'd like to see in a future video. I'd be very interested, with all the variations on martinis, to hear what your preferred form of the martini is, because everyone's got their own thing. It's all right. You know what a good martini is? A good martini is a martini that you enjoy drinking. Cheers.